4 songs on this homage to country music, and it's called Jukebox Folk, and I do have a copy for everyone if you're interested back there at the table. You see my lovely wife Kim. She'll take care of that for you. Four of the songs, one of them, the jukebox taught me everything I know. But then finally, after this long desert of not writing songs, I put out a record a year and a half ago that has nothing but my own songs on it. It just opened up a floodgate of material. And I was inspired by some of the greatest songwriters ever. Because as a radio host over the years, of course, I've had the opportunity to meet and talk to and interview some of the greatest songwriters that ever lived. And because of that, it's both intimidating, of course, but it's also inspiring. One songwriter in particular that I love, and anybody who writes songs would probably admit to this as well, is a guy by the name of Townes Van Zandt. You know Townes, right? In case you don't, he wrote a couple of songs that made it to the radio. One of them was, If I Needed You, Would You Come to Me? Would you come to me for to ease my pain? Now Townes was in fact in a lot of pain. He lived his life, he died about 10 years ago now, and he lived his life pretty much addicted to just about everything. He was, I read a book called To Live Is to Fly about Townes' life. And it was a fascinating book written by John Cruth. And it turns out when Townes was a young man, he came from a rich family in Houston. And they didn't know what to do with this rich creative spirit, so they ended up giving him shock therapy. And he went through several bouts of this shock therapy when he was just a kid. And I think that probably set him on the path to this life of pain. But if you knew Townes, if you ever met the guy, he was the sweetest guy in the world, although he drank too much, did too many pills, pretty much ingested everything he could. So I read this book called To Live Is to Fly. You know, another one of his songs that you probably know. Living on the road, my friend, is gonna keep you free and clean. Now you wear your skin like iron, breath as hard as kerosene. You know that one? Now I gotta sing it because it mentions cleaning. Weren't your mom's on the board, your favorite one it seems? She began to cry when you said goodbye, and sank into your dream. Pancho, he's a bandit, boys. His horse is fast as polished steel, or his gun outside his pants, all the honest world to feel. Pancho met his match, you know, in the deserts down in Mexico. Nobody heard his dying words. Oh, but that's the way it goes. You know the words. All the better I say, could have had him any day, only let him slip away. Out of kindness, I suppose. Lefty, he can't sing the blues all night long like he used to. Dust that Pancho bit down south ended up in Lefty's mouth. Davy laid poor Pancho low. Lefty's lit for Ohio, where he got the breath to go. Well, there ain't nobody knows. Let me hear you sing. All the federale say could have had him any day, only let him slip away. Out of kindness, I suppose. Poets tell how Pancho felt. Lefty's living in a cheap hotel. Desert's quiet and Cleveland's cold, so the story ends we're told. Pancho needs your prayers, it's true. Save a few for Lefty too. He only did what he had to do, and now he's growing old. All the federales say could have had him any day, only let him go so long. Out of kindness, I suppose. Well, I had the opportunity to interview Townes twice on the radio. Hang around long enough, you get to meet your heroes, you know? And I was really excited about meeting him because I was such a big fan. But I had heard that he was kind of a tough interview. Something about Townes, there was a lot of space between what he thought and what he said, and I'm sure that has a lot to do with the drugs he had taken his whole life. Now, normally I can put up with that if we're sitting at the Beachland Tavern at the bar, you know, I'd rather you thought about what you were going to say. But with Townes on the radio, when he did that, we have a word for that. Do you know what it is, Jim? Dead air. Right? That's right. And so I'm going to try to faithfully recreate for you the way Townes answered this particular question. Because I love that song so much. I said, Townes, you know, you got to tell me, how did you come to write that song, Pancho and Lefty? How'd you write that song? And this is what he said. He went, well, Matt, I wrote that song in a chair. In a chair, Townes? Wow, that's pretty fascinating. Tell me more. And you know what, Matt? If you would have been in that chair at that time, you would have wrote that song. Well, what do you say to that? Where the hell's that chair? Up there, how they say, could have had any day, only let him slip away. Out of kindness, I suppose. Well, he claims to have written that song, If I Needed You, in his sleep. He said that he had drank a whole bottle of codeine cough syrup. That didn't necessarily mean Townes had a cold, mind you. He was at Guy Clark's house, as a matter of fact, and he drank this bottle of cough syrup, went to sleep, and he claims that that entire song, his biggest hit, was on the notebook when he woke up in the morning, and he had absolutely no recollection of writing it down. And the melody was in his head. So I tell you this story, it doesn't sound plausible, but it's absolutely true. I finished reading his biography called To Live Is to Fly. In that biography, I had read that his favorite flower was the morning glory, which was the perfect metaphor for the man's life. Because, you know, it blooms in the morning and it dies at night. And it's a weed, after all. So I finished reading the book, I closed it, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and when I woke up the next day, I had what I thought was an entire line of poetry that seemed like a gift from Townes. And it was this: some say it was just booze, or some wild, untamed muse, or one more pure image unfurled. Now I may be wrong, but I'd say it's a song that lifted you up from this world. So that was in my head, and I decided to try and write the whole song.